Hey everybody, welcome back to Becoming a Therapist. I have with me today Patrick Monette. Patrick, thanks so much for coming on my show.
Thanks for having me, Morgan. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to hear from you. I want to give you the floor. I want to hear about your therapist origin story, how you got into the field, and how you got to where you are today.
Oh, okay. So like back of how. Okay.
Yes,
Well,
wherever you want to start,
okay.
wherever feels natural.
Sure. So really funny story. My undergrad, I was a double major in Spanish and Latin American studies, and for part
Ooh,
of the degree, we had to study abroad for a semester.
okay.
And I decided on Chile. And I went and I loved it, and I ended up staying the full year and finishing my degree in South America. And then I came home and I just felt a little lost. So I was here for a couple months and then I ended up moving back to Chile for almost 2 more years. And,
Wow.
just living and, doing all sorts of different things and adventures. And then when I came home, it just kind of felt at that time I was wanting to further my education. I wanted more opportunities. I was ready to come home and I was working at the local university's bookstore where I'd gone to school. And I was looking at different programs, and I saw the clinical mental health program, and there were just some criteria that they had that I really enjoyed, and I wanted to go into a career where I could have freedom and not be stuck in one role for the rest of my life because that just seemed very restrictive for me. And I decided to apply, and I did all of the things, and I was accepted and I absolutely loved my program. It was really fun. It really challenged me. My cohort was amazing. We built a really great connection. I was the graduate assistant for a year and a half in the program. So it really became an integral part of my life and seeing all the workings of a graduate program and, counselor ed. And then when I got my first job, it was actually an internship that I was doing. It was in addictions. And so I spent about 4 years there. And then I started to transition into other positions where I was in a clinic, a county clinic, and then I went to a for-profit, which was its own beast of experiences and, Pandora's box. And I knew that I wanted to get into private practice at some point, but there were sort of conflicts of, they were saying at the time at the county that you couldn't have a private practice, just like whatever at that time, their rules. So when I went to the for-profit addictions clinic, I did a very part-time private practice and started to open, just general mental health and wanting to help people and spread my wings. And then I had transitioned to the university, actually, where I had studied as the alcohol and drug coordinator for the entire university. So that was really cool because when I had walked into the position, I was able to use all of my counseling skills, but in a different format where I would be working with students who were so fun. It was probably like one of they were just, I just loved them. Like working with the college population was its own beauty of, I mean, I've always loved the clients that I've worked with. And I think, if you've been in the field, you usually don't leave a job because of the clients. It's usually like other stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so I did that for about a year and a half. And during that, I was building my private practice. And then with some different changes in my personal life, I decided to make the leap. And that was around 2012, maybe? I think
Okay.
2000. I mean, it's been a while. So then I launched into private practice, and I have been doing that ever since. So full-time
Wow.
private practice. I'm licensed in New York and in Florida. I am now, since COVID happened, it was funny because I remember in grad school, telehealth was so like, oh, it's bad, it's not as good, and everything. And then
Yeah.
and then the world happened, and now I'm 100% telehealth.
Wow. Okay.
So during that time, I think as I said, I loved my graduate program. I, I believe that when you get into the field after you graduate, it's sort of like now the real training and education begins. And it took a while because I was so hungry. I really loved learning, but your population changes and the needs change. So for a while, I had been interested in, what kind of trying to figure out what my next step would be.
Yeah.
And I eventually got trained. Well, we were talking about being a therapist. I was actually in therapy. And I had heard some different things about EMDR, but I wasn't really sure about it. And I had told my therapist, I really don't want any of that EMDR stuff. I was very open minded. Great. We make great clients, don't we?
Right.
And she was like, okay, fine. And then there was a moment where I was stuck with something, and she said, could we try a little EMDR? And then it really did change my life, that session.
Wow.
And it was very profound. And I left that session knowing that I needed to learn it, not just for myself, but for my clients. Like it felt like it was a missing piece for me. And I went in, and it took a while to get a program because that was around 2013, 2014, and online
Okay.
trainings weren't really happening as they were now. So you really did have to plan, where am I going to go and travel? Some of the hard, things of, it's hard.
Yeah.
Where do I want to go for a training? And I found one actually about an hour away from where I live, so I was able to do that. I live in northern New York, so we don't get a lot of trainings in this area, so it was just awesome. And I became fully trained in 2014, and then I decided to go on to get certified, and then I became a consultant in training. And now I am a full consultant, and I'm actually working on becoming an EMDR trainer. So it's been in between that because we like to be busy usually. I
Yeah.
also, because I specialize in couples as well.
Ooh.
So I
Okay.
started this was actually, I had traveled to Dublin, Ireland to start my EFT training. And I found, I was like, I found a good training in Dublin. And when I was proceeding with the steps, COVID had taken over. So then I transitioned to a training online in the States and found a great consultant and trainer. And so now I'm certified EMT as well. And a large part of the work I do when I'm doing trainings and working with a lot of consultants and doing, especially EMDR consultants, is how to integrate EMDR into your practice and then specifically with couples.
Okay. Wow, that's cool. So that is a lot different than how I traditionally think about EMDR. So, I mean, can you kind of walk me through what's that like when one person is doing the bilateral stimulation? Like, is the other person just there? Like, how
Yeah,
does that, yeah.
it's a really good question, and I've actually created 3 continuing education courses on it, like all-day courses that are on demand, so people can check that out. Because there's so much, right? It's such a good question. I remember when I went to my training, and I was interested in in couples. And if you've ever been trained in EMDR, they always say, well, it's coming, or it's coming. So I waited and I waited. And then there was half a slide in the PowerPoint, and it was like, you can do this with couples or something. I was like,
Yeah.
this is crap. Like, I've been waiting. It didn't, but in a basic training, it's a specialization, right?
Yeah.
It's just like if you work with a certain population. So I went and I made all the mistakes, in the best intention of just trying to figure out what to do. And as I developed in my EMDR, I I didn't find any trainings. I didn't see anyone that really worked with couples at that time in the EMDR population, so it was kind of blind for a while.
Hmm.
And when I started to facilitate in the EMDR trainings, then the opportunity to offer some ongoing education courses came up. I also do an EMDR and anger management one, which is really cool. Exploring
Ooh.
the therapeutic role of anger and trauma in mental health.
Yeah.
So when with an EMDR, there are the 8 phases of the model, of the AIP model, when you're doing what's called the standard protocol. And a lot of times people will ask is like, can you do EMDR with couples? And what they're really asking is, can you do reprocessing with couples? But there's really, we can't put the cart before the horse. There's a lot of skills and preparation work that we can do with couples to give them skills before we even touch reprocessing. And I think
Okay.
sometimes we we overshoot a bit of saying we have to do this in an order to see what the couple needs, what do they want, what's appropriate therapeutically to recommend. And one of the big focuses that I do is teaching them EMDR skills. So that way, because if you work with couples, one of the biggest needs that you see is how do we stop fighting, or how do we stop the disconnection when we're not in therapy? Right?
Okay.
So I love EFT. I love it. I fell in love with it. But it's not a technique focused, like it's not like a skill focus. It's more of a processing thing. And so
Okay.
I started to really incorporate the EMDR into a little bit, and did they just danced really well together. And being able to teach couples. Now, when you're doing couples therapy, you know that it's hard. You're managing a lot of energy, and people are in pain if they're coming for couples therapy, and they're anxious and worried. And you usually have one partner who has more buy-in and the other partner who's a little bit more reserved. So if I can teach them skills that they can use without me, that are evidence-based, that work, then we're going to see a little bit more buy-in, and they're going to start using them to feel better outside of session, which is what we want, right? And
Yes.
and being able to say it isn't. And what I try to do when I'm teaching couples these skills, it's you don't have to wait until you're in crisis to use these skills. As soon as you feel something's off, this will help prevent that disconnection or that escalation, depending on how the couple, what their negative cycle looks like. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, for sure. I mean, just interfere, or what am I trying to say? Intervening before it gets too
Yes.
wild and we're calling names and we're
Yes.
storming
Hurting.
out and all that stuff. I mean, that's huge. So, how do you help people actually see those warning signs that it's starting to get bad, or recognize that cycle, or whatever? Because I mean, that's hard when you're caught up in the emotions and you're in the moment.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And what I again, because I've made all the mistakes, I could be like,
Yeah.
oh, I've done that. Because when you're working with couples, I mean, let's backtrack. When you're a therapist, and whoever you're working with, you do the best you can to help them. And sometimes you
Yeah.
just don't know exactly what they're dealing with, and sometimes they don't really know what they're dealing with. So we do the best we can and learn. So what I found is when couples come in, it was almost sort of like I felt that I was an emergency room attendee instead of a therapist at times. Like, we're in crisis. We need, like, get the and it made me
Yeah.
really overwhelmed. Like, oh my God, your marriage, the house, the kids, the future, the children. It's just like, we have 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So I learned through EFT, go slower.
Okay.
You have to teach them to go slower, because if not, we're all going to crash. And what I love to do, I'm a romantic guy. I love getting what I call the love story. That's part of my intake paper. That's part of my intake process. And because couples will come in and they're ready to tell you all the bad stuff, right? Because that's what they're there.
Right.
But if I don't know where you started, how do I know what got you there? And the love, in my opinion, if they had love, right? If they're there because they're in love and they want to work on the relationship, is one of the strongest assets. And I
Yeah.
love asking couples that, because it's so fun, because you get to know them, and I'm silly and I use a lot of humor, and usually it's sort of like, well, we met in high school, or we met at the date, or it's very short. And I'm very direct, and I'll say, no, I don't want the Twitter version. I want the details. I want to
Yeah.
know, when did you fall in love? What was it like when you saw the name on the phone? And it's like, did you laugh when you hear their voice? Do you smile when you see each other? Like, how did you fall in love?
Yeah.
And I see almost an apprehension that, oh, we didn't know we could talk about good stuff here. So
Yeah.
being able to pull that in in my opinion, is a great resource. Like an EMDR language is a great resource tool, because that's what I'm going to reference back to, of saying when you get into that negative cycle, when you're yelling, are you talking to the same person that, used to text you and send you flowers, or, would pick up your favorite pizza? Like, is that the same process that's going on? And, just a little bit of, gentle confrontation, or, what's the term? Discrepancy
Yeah.
of, we're losing each other here. You're losing each other. And when they
Wow.
remember that they love each other, then we can build from there. And validating the pain and the loss, whatever it might be that brought them to where they are. I don't know if when you were growing up, Morgan, if you ever played the telephone game in school.
Yes. 100%.
Right. So I tell couples that, I say, I believe every couple has a telephone game. So it's sort of like, when you're in school, it's like, Mrs. Smith loves kittens. And at the end of 20 kids, it's like, Mrs. Smith kills kittens. It's all like distorted. And it's the same thing of, do you want me, when we're talking to a couple, it's like, hey, what do you want for dinner? Well, why don't we just, and I remember seeing this once, not in a work event, it was just a social event. The husband was asking the wife, what do you want for dinner? And she said, oh, you don't like my cooking, do you? And he said, no, I know that you are tired. But it hit something. It hit a pain. It went through that telephone game.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to give them some reference points is really important to normalize that every couple goes through this. We're just figuring out what's going on. When we can decrease some of that fear, then we can get in, because it's sort of like emotional inflammation. I can't do any intervention if we're restricted. Being able to validate both partners, because validating isn't agreeing, it's saying what your emotions, your thoughts, your experiences are valid. Let's see how they come together in the relationship. And what is whether you want to call it the negative cycle as we do in EFT, or what is the maladaptive skills, whatever language we want to pull from, being able to say, what I love to ask the question, if I was a fly in the wall during one of these arguments, what would I be seeing? And because maybe my background of seeing some not great stuff, I want my couples to know I'm not afraid to go anywhere. So I will give them examples and say, because I don't want them to feel shamed, and I don't want them to feel worried that I'm going to shame them. I will say, are we shutting down? Are we yelling? Are we throwing? Are we swearing? Are we freezing each other out? And like, what? Just give me a synopsis. And then once I have a vision, then we can start figuring out a little bit of like, what's going on? How do you go from loving each other and dancing and being in love to this? Like, what's the transition? And then that's when I start talking about, sort of like in a trauma-informed way, of when they go from connected to disconnected, and when they're feeling safe and maybe not so safe or secure, depending on the client. Because sometimes I like secure and safe to use. And being able to work with both of them to say, it's okay if we don't feel safe with our partner at times. Because sometimes emotionally we shut down. Are they going to criticize me? Are they going to mock me? Well, it's been 20 years and they've never validated my feelings. Like, how long are these injuries?
Right.
And let's figure out that they're happening.
Yeah.
Because ignorance isn't bliss when we're talking about relationships. And figure out, how do we reconnect you? So that way we can get back to love.
Wow.
Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great perspective. Because I start with the same story when I see couples or the same question of what's the story of how you met and all that stuff. But I didn't think about how that connects to EMDR resourcing. And so it sounds like there's a lot of trying to get to a place where there's safety in the relationship, and like that's the person that we can go to heal, instead of this is the person that's the bad guy and we're trying to heal from them, using the relationship for the healing. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes normalizing, it's okay if your partner isn't your safe person in this moment.
Okay.
Like, for example, if we're talking about infidelity, or if there's been a betrayal, it's okay that they don't trust you. We got to just let them be that. Like, it's okay they don't, because you broke the trust. I don't know why sometimes we're afraid to, like, call a spade a spade. I'm not shaming or judging, but if you broke the trust, that person has to have the dignity to take the time they need to heal.
Okay.
And when we're looking, like for example, if it's a physical injury, I would be like, can you heal your ankle a little bit faster? We're supposed to go for a run tomorrow. Like, could you know, I would never say that. But if I've
Yeah.
injured you, if I've betrayed you, it's like, can you just forgive me so we can move on? Because it's uncomfortable for me. So being able to normalize that, once again, going slower, saying, so how do we rebuild trust in the relationship? And also with the person who's injured, they trusted someone. And usually we have to have that conversation of, how do you trust yourself again after trusting someone who's broken your trust? And I think being able to validate that and give both partners saying, that's not a death sentence. That's actually how we get the poison out. We can earn trust is a beautiful gift, and people say it's fragile. I don't think it's fragile. I think it's wise. You hurt me, I'm not going to trust you again because I'm afraid you might hurt me again.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty adaptive. We just don't want it to erode and break the relationship. So what can we do together using the relationship? So maybe, something that's coming to mind as you're saying that is one of the helpful tips that I've learned in those moments, like when a couple is trying to build that safety again, and I'm sure you've seen this, is when there's a disagreement or an argument and one partner wants to talk about it right now and the other partner's like, I need a minute. And then they get into an argument again because they're just like, I want to talk about it now. No, yes, no. So I developed this really, I try to go with simplicity. It's called the traffic light technique that I give my couples. And basically it's just sort of this template of using the traffic light colors, where when you don't know how your partner is, like I know we're therapists and I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but sometimes when feelings aren't safe, or when we're dealing with someone who isn't fluid in language of emotions, using a traffic light, most of us know what that means. So, hey, what color's your day? Or I noticed something's off. What color are you right now? And they might say, you and I are a green. My day was a red. So I'm just sort of shut down right now, or I'm at a yellow because it was really stressful. And then that gives the partner, that's building trust. It's a new pathway of how to say, hey, I'm checking in with you. If you're at a yellow or a red, to sort of hopefully prevent that anxiety of like, oh my God, you're a red, it's alert, we got an emergency couple session. You're at a red or yellow. Do you need time alone or do you need something from me?
Ooh. Yeah.
Because that way we want every partner to have something to do and we want options. It's like, let me just go, get a drink of water and then I can come back and we can talk about it. So it's sort of learning, one of the things that I've learned with couples is we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We live in a world where structure and systems are really helpful. So give couples something so that in those moments of pain, it isn't so overwhelming.
Yeah. That's so realistic and practical.
Yeah, and just tangible.
Yes. Yes, 100%.
And then you can say, I love it when I see people say, my day was a red. I'm at home right now and you and I are good. We're at a green, but the red affected me. And that way the other partner isn't going to be, is it me? Is it me? Is it me? Did I do something? Are they mad at me?
Ooh,
right? And if they are, let's say they get into an argument and say, I'm at a red, I need a minute. The agreement is, and I'm going to come back and talk to you. Like there's going to be that agreement that even if I'm at a red, I'm going to come back to you. I think because the anxious partner is like, oh, you're going to leave if you're at a green. Like anything other than a green is bad. We got to normalize that with our people and just say, it's all valid. It's all realistic. And then I think when you give them those systems, those tools, those tips, it's easier to build safety and security. Because then if I can tell you my need, so I work with a lot of people. I mean, I'm going to be stereotypical for a minute. A lot of guys that I work with don't, emotional language isn't always easily accessible.
That's fair.
In my experience. And so
Yes.
if I can give them a traffic light that they'll buy in and be like, I'm in a green, I'm in a yellow right now. Like I don't even want to talk about this. It's like, okay, he just expressed a need, and now the partner doesn't have to guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're at a yellow. Now that you're a yellow, I'm at it. You know, like that's a whole other conversation. But it
Yes.
gives them something, and then that's the building step. So when I teach clients that, I'll say, make this your own. We don't want rigidity. We want structure, not rigidity. Because
Yeah.
then I also try to, pull in a little bit of romance and in flirtation of, why don't you just send each other a text during the day? It's like, hey, honey, what color's your day? Or, hey, love muffin, what color's your day? My day is green. I saw this. It's like, hey, I'm thinking of you.
Yes. That's so simple.
Yeah. And obtainable is the word that makes sense for me of this is something, because people are busy, right? Couples are busy, especially if I think everyone is, so I'll just leave it at that. But if we can give them something that they can integrate into their life without another pressure, I think we're going to have more buy-in, and they're just going to see that it works.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think about all the apps that are out there of I feel like that is, and again, maybe this is a stereotype, but like the wife or the pursuer or the one that has more buy-in with therapy, the one that's thinking that there's more problems or whatever. I see this over and over and over is that person in the relationship just wants them to get all the apps, and we're getting the paired app and we're getting the bonded app, and we're going to
Yep.
do all the activities, and I'm going to make you do all of these daily check-ins. When
Yes.
you're at work, you're going to stop and you're
Mm-hmm.
going to send me all this info about you or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, just the traffic light, like the simplicity of that, I think obtainable is the perfect word. That's something that you can do on your lunch break or whatever, and you don't have to explain it. You don't have
Yeah.
to get into it. You can just check in.
Yes. And then you and your partner know and I don't use the word it's part of your love language. Like you're creating. You might have, I love the book. I love that philosophy, and I'm going to steal the phrase a little bit. But every couple has to have their own love language and
Okay.
create one. And the other thing that I wanted to say is, that I thought of when you were talking is even the people, what I've seen, even the partner who might use emotional language more, what I've seen sometimes may not always be receptive of the other partner's emotion if it's not what they want it to be.
Oh, okay.
So for example, if
Okay.
you and I are talking and I don't like when you're angry and you're like, well, I'm really angry right now. I have to learn how to hear your anger.
Ooh, that can be intimidating.
So if you say to me instead of I'm angry at you, it's like I'm at a red. It's like then everyone just kind of pauses and breathes. Okay. The partner who might be angry, it may not feel safe to say
Mm,
anger. If we are dealing with, if there's mental health, if there's involved in the relationship, in their history, if there's been violent, historically, or if I work with a lot of people who are adult children of alcoholics, addicts, or chaos. So expressing any emotion isn't safe. But if I can give them a color, then they can have the dignity of expressing it in their own way, in their own language. And then the relationship, that strength, that safety is, my partner just told me they're at a red, I got their back.
yeah.
We're at it, and it doesn't. And I always tell couples this because I think it's important. It doesn't mean red's bad. It could be,
Hmm.
I'm having a panic attack, or at an event, and I'm just really anxious, or a work thing, or I just don't feel well, or I really miss the dog or miss the kids. I'm at a red. That way, you have your partner's like, okay, you go home and I'll take care of this, or something like. It won't
Yeah.
be the guessing game.
Yes.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense? Like,
Right. Yeah, no, I think you're onto something there because it's so easy to quickly like take it as a personal thing or like, ooh, what did I do? What
yes.
is wrong with us? Yes. And so, and I think a lot of partners don't really want to get into it, whether they don't want to burden their partner with it today
Hmm.
or they're still processing it or they're still trying to get in. But if you're close to somebody, like, you know what's up. You know what's up.
You
You know
feel it.
something's up.
You feel it.
You feel it.
Hmm.
And so that's a good distinction there. I love how you brought in the piece of childhood trauma as well, like the alcoholic families, of just like almost like that hypervigilance piece of it.
Hmm.
Um, I don't quite have the words for it, but yeah, if there's just a little hint or there's a similar mannerism or something like that that the spouse is doing, that kind of reminds you of, oh, when this happened to me as a child, it was not safe.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I can't help but wonder how often that happens, and like the partner doesn't even realize they're mimicking the same mannerisms or behavior or
Hmm.
whatever. And now there's a communication breakdown, and
Safety is gone.
that's so
Yeah.
complicated.
And that's
Yeah.
why when I'm doing my intake, I also created a trauma informed intake form for couples because I
Okay.
wasn't seeing any of the questions relating to the issues I was seeing, which would include, and I tried to be, because I think sometimes we can overcomplicate things, I wanted it to be simplistic but intentional. So I started
Mhm.
to ask more of, can you tell me your understanding of mental health?
Yeah.
Is it, because sometimes we'll see partners where someone's been in therapy since they were 5 and the other person has never read a self-help book, just totally different worlds.
Yeah.
What's your definition of trauma? Of trauma is a big one. Is that something that only, vets can get, or is that something where it's like I've lived with trauma my whole life? What is the spectrum we're
Yeah.
working with here, and how do the partners define this stuff? Because it plays into those moments, right? How
Yes.
do they define intimacy? And I always take the stance of intimacy of, we're not just talking about sex, even though that can come up with couples, but intimacy is also, um, is there hand holding? Are you calling each other using terms of endearment? Is there kissing? Is there more intimacy going on? Of privacy. Is there laughing? Is there how do you connect with each other? Because once again, in the EMDR language, like I'm resource building. What do you do to show each other that you love each other? It
Ooh,
isn't
yeah.
always it isn't always bonbons and truffle or in poetry. It could be, hey, I changed your tires, I got your brakes fixed, or I picked up your favorite pizza tonight because I knew you had a long day. Like, what are those moments of connection that
Yes.
enhance our, when we have those bad moments, this is going to help us come back faster.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm curious, how do you respond to this partner that comes in and is not trauma informed, and they're like, well, I get that that happened to him and that sucks, but that was a long time ago and I don't act like that and I'm not the problem, and they just keep getting triggered, and it's just defensive and all of that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Like what, like how do you psychoeducate somebody who's really like just driving their heels in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I validate that. It's like, that's fair. And I really
Mm,
appreciate you letting me know where you're coming from, because that's going to
yeah.
help me translate anything that I say, because I don't want to come in and do all this psychobabble if I'm only talking to one partner. So
Yes.
the language I'm going to use is going to evolve based on my audience, right? So then
Okay.
what I like to do is pull from EMDR. That's where I go into, whether I ever do reprocessing or not is irrelevant. I can teach them about the brain. I can teach
Okay.
them about the adaptive informational process. I can teach them, especially let's say the partner has trauma and I know that they don't really understand it. And they're saying, well, I'm not the one who hurt you. I'm not the one who assaulted you. I'm not the one who beat you. It's like, no, but this is what's happening to your partner in that
Mm,
moment. And I give an example of, so when, of what a flashback is, or, when you yell, this is what that person's brain is doing. It's going into
yeah.
fight, flight, or fawn mode. And this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And what I have found when I take the time to do that, that defensiveness melts a little bit and saying, oh,
Okay.
so something's happening to them that I didn't understand. Got it. And then I try to weave in medical analogies because I feel like there's a little bit more buy-in than that. And so one that has worked really well, there's two that I use. One is, it's sort of like if you're an asthmatic or if you have a peanut
Okay.
allergy. So,
Oh, okay.
you know how the term calm down has never effectively worked in the history of yes, people still hold on to that. So I
Yeah.
will use that and I will say, so we're just going to eliminate that from our work because it never works, right? It never, so I want you to think of your partner when there's a trigger, when something is going on. It's very similar to if they had a peanut allergy. Now, if you knew they had a peanut allergy and they had an exposure, would you say, just walk it off, breathe deeper, you're weak, you know, why are you being so dramatic? No, you
Yes.
would say, do we need to go to the ER? Here's your EpiPen. There would be immediate connection. So when we think of emotions, if we think about it as an allergic reaction, we give it more validity.
Yeah.
It isn't that your partner is trying to hurt you, they're going through a reaction. You're not allergic to peanuts. You can eat all the peanut butter you want. But you're telling me, and this is where you weave in again. Remember that person you told me you fell in love with? That's who's hurting right now.
Yeah.
When you're yelling because you don't understand it, he or she is hurting right now.
Yeah.
Can we unpack that a bit so I can help you find each other in those moments of pain? Because no, you did not hurt her in the past. You did, or him. You did not create these injuries, but you fell in love with someone who has these injuries.
Yes. Wow, I love that language because it reminds me so much of like the questions we ask people about their inner child. Or like, would you say that to somebody else? Or like, what would you say to yourself when you were a child where you were in that situation? Like
Yes.
going back to that beginning, like almost like the first impression of their partner, like that person you fell in love with.
Yeah, and I also love to, and sometimes this is a little more. This is also authentic to my personality. I will say the things that you said. Let's say there's talking about confrontation, or there's some harsh stuff being said. I will say something along the lines of, "What would you do if someone ever said that to your partner? What would you do if
Mm-hmm.
I said that to your partner right now? Would you come back? Would you schedule another appointment? No, right? No, it's like,
Yeah,
so
hopefully not.
you're their person and you're saying this to them. Can we unpack that a bit? Because, and once again, it's not shaming, it's the confronting. It doesn't make sense. It's pain. Because that partner's in pain. When we're looking at it, is the term let's fix it. They just want to fix it, right? That's
Yeah.
another one I tell people. It's like, we're just going to eliminate that from our work because this isn't a lamp. We're not fixing a car. Um, but I see that you get really frustrated when you don't know what to do when they're having a reaction. I'm going to give you
Mm.
some skills of what to do because you love
Yeah.
them, right? And then you're interweaving their love story. You don't have, and I think part of what I try to do in my trainings and with my clients is sort of own the stereotype and the harshness that our field has done. Like with
Mm-hmm.
couples therapy, is we aren't trying to change you as a partner. If you're not a romantic, loving, poetry person, I don't want you to be. But I want
Yeah.
you to be able to express your needs and to be able to hear your partner's needs. Totally different things. Sort of like when people are afraid to go to therapy because they think we're going to make them cry all the time. It's like, if you need to cry, I'll be there for you, but that's not really my goal. So, I think sometimes with couples specifically, naming the elephants in the room
Okay.
is part of
Yeah.
the trauma informed care of. My job is just to, I'm not going to take anything away from you. I want to give you more. I want to give you coping skills. I want to get you in the next 30, 40, 50 years so you have that relationship that you both dream of.
Mm-hmm.
It takes work.
Wow.
It takes work, right? But when we put it into mechanics where, and that's what I learned a lot from EFT. I always joke. I run a program through EFT called Hold Me Tight, and I always joke that I blame a lot of my unhealthy romantic issues with Disney. Because
Oh,
growing up, and after school specials, growing up is like happily
yes.
ever after. Like you became the ugly duckling becomes the swan, and always have to change to find love. And and then I think
Yeah.
when I saw Shrek, was the first time I understood adult relationships. Like, I love you, but I want my swamp.
Yeah.
And couples are like, exactly. That's exactly
Wow.
like we want to go in the kingdom and you want your swamp. Let's figure out how to
Yes.
make it together. And you bring in, a little bit of humor.
Yeah.
But EFT really taught me with the EMDR background of there's science to love. It isn't something that's unobtainable. You just have to work on it and learn who you are, learn what your needs are, how to express that, and also be able to handle hearing feedback from your partner and being able to figure out how did they express their love. I think sometimes, and maybe you see this working with couples, we talk about, oh, this is my love language, or this is his, and I think sometimes they get stuck with that. It's like, now that we've identified love languages, what do we do with it? And that's where
Yeah.
I come in and say, well, we're going to build a new bridge. Because
Okay.
it's okay that you have different love languages or different ways that you express affection or any of that. But does your partner know that? Have you ever had that discussion? Have we ever,
Right.
and I love to teach couples of, if you haven't said it, then they don't know.
Well, yeah. That's true. They can't read our minds.
Right. Now
We
there are
wish that
times
they could, but
Now, there are times where, for example, people might say, but what if I have said it? It's like, then there's an issue because your partner's not hearing you and they don't know what to do with it.
right. Right.
So,
Wow. Okay.
yeah. So being able to validate, it's like you're both frustrated because you love each other and you're in pain.
Uh-huh.
It's not to oversimplify, and I hope it doesn't come across that way, but when we clear out the confusion of like, what's the nucleus here? You love each other and you're missing each other. It's that attachment language is your safety is gone because you can't connect to your partner.
Ooh. Yeah.
It's
That's true. I mean, yeah.
I use the analogy sort of like when you go to like the airport and then you lose each other. Like you're doing fine, you're so excited for this trip, and then like someone goes through TSA and you go to the bathroom, you can't find each other, and then you're in an argument.
Yeah.
It's like because I didn't feel safe, and we have a hard time as adults saying that I didn't feel safe. I didn't know where you were.
Yes, and I think that fear of abandonment gets pathologized so quickly, but that's a normal human thing.
Yes, but again, if we are taught we're never supposed to feel that way, or we're never supposed to express it, or we have in the past, and it's hurt us. That's part of where the work comes in. It's like, so that's where that we may not be able to trust 100% because of my life experiences, but this is what I can give you, and let's strengthen that
Yeah.
together and building that our own romantic language and bridge.
Yes, I love that. So it also kind of begs the question. I've heard of couples and I've worked with individuals who have maybe been to couples counseling, and they feel like it doesn't work. They read the Hold Me Tight book
Hmm.
by Dr. Sue Johnson, and it's just nothing's working. Or I think there's a lot of situations where, and maybe this is not the majority, just this happens sometimes, where there's one person who's just kind of consenting to couples counseling to go through the motions, but they're really like they're emotionally out of it. They're emotionally done.
Hmm.
And so how do you make that call? Like how do you know when to call it quits? How do you tell as a therapist when one person just really does not want to be in it anymore?
I ask them.
Okay.
I'll say, what do you both want to get out of this? And
Okay.
and because I also want to know. And sometimes I had a therapist actually say to me once that always stayed with me is, until you heal the fear of losing your relationship, you can never really enjoy it.
Ooh.
Right?
Okay.
Like how much
Okay.
anxiety and fear. Oh, I hope this doesn't end. I hope it. What happens what if they leave me? Like you were saying, all that anxiety. What if I
Yeah.
wasn't afraid of losing you? I'm
Wow.
with you because I want to be with you.
Yeah.
It's breaking that old Disney stuff, right? In my own little
Right.
world. It's like, I'm with you because we're partners and we want to be together. I also know a lot of people are together because they have to be. We live in a complicated world, right? And being able to, once again, show them that I'm not afraid of those conversations. I'll say, what are some of the goals that you like to get out of here? Like, do you want to improve the relationship? Are you unsure? Are you not sure if you want to be in the relationship anymore? Like, if we just kind of throw all of that out, what areas would we want to go in? And even if I'm planting a seed for a partner to learn, I mean, let's be real, it's okay if they don't want to be in the relationship anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're
Stuff to
so
think about.
I think we're so afraid as couples therapists that, well, it's I'm not gonna say, you should end it. That's not my role, but I will assist you to do this in the most healthy way. And being able to express that. I also have found having that conversation normalizes our pain of being in a relationship.
Okay.
In the sense of, let me clarify,
Okay. Yeah.
have you ever had a day where you're like, I'm just sick of adulting?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think we need to normalize a little bit of saying, I'm tired of being married today, or I'm tired of being a mom, or I'm tired of being a dad. I'm tired of this job. I'm tired of responsibilities. I love you. I'm just tired. I just want to be a kid again, or I want to, do these things. I think if we can create a space for that, of saying, it's okay if we get tired. It's okay if we need a break. That's not the worst thing in the world. It's when we don't do it, then we're getting into more arguments. When those needs are getting neglected, then they're going to come out in a maladaptive, dysfunctional way.
Wow.
Because I'm going
That
to get
sounds so
angry at
freeing.
you. Yeah, it's
Yes.
okay. It's sort of like, it's okay. I don't want to be an adult today. I know a lot of times we say that jokingly, but I think it also, if we're talking about couples, committed relationships, if we're talking about marriage, being able to validate there is so much hard work and pressure that goes into these that no one talks about.
Wow.
When I work with parents, of being able to say, and parents I find sometimes are so afraid of, I just hate being a parent today. If a parent or a partner cannot say one of the hardest jobs they've ever done is hard, how can any intervention I do reach that, because they're in so much pain?
Wow. Yeah. That's true. I mean, you're just acknowledging it.
Yeah. And then it's like you can breathe. Like, oh
Yes.
my God, yeah, I hate my boss. Can we do this? Then all of a sudden we can hopefully get them to say, so what can we do so you're not hating life? What can you do so you're not shutting down watching TV every weekend? What can you do so you're not, we're together? That's also where I like to try to, I use the term date nights. And I actually created, it was really fun, a program called Romance 101. And
Ooh,
it's
okay.
sort of like, it's, people can they can go to my website, and it's all, which is nice because you don't have to interact with me. And the reason I say that is because couples want ease, right? They don't want another
Yeah.
they don't have to talk to me. And it's an email course basically for 13 weeks. And it's like, hey, this is what romance is. This is what romance isn't. This is a date night activity. And everything, so you get that for 13 weeks. And then
Yes.
everything that is in there, I created with compassion of budget limitations, time limitations, energy limitations, and going back to what you said a few minutes ago, Morgan, commitment limitations. I can't give
Mm-hmm.
you all of this, but I can go on date night. And
Yes.
and then after the 13 weeks, you just start using the ideas again, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So when I tell my couples, I suggest that they do a date night, I always say, I use that term. It doesn't mean you have to go out dinner and dancing. It can be something that's just the two of you. You can get your favorite ice cream and just say, we're going to have a midnight ice cream party, just the two of us for 5 minutes, because that's all we can do. That's all we can carve out. But I put some stipulations in that, is there's no talking about kids or family. There's
Ooh,
no
okay.
talking about finances or money. And
Okay.
there's no talking about work.
I love that.
And
Yeah.
then you see the panic come over. It's like, well, then what do we talk about? It's like, I don't care. Talk about the weather. Talk about the ice cream. It doesn't matter. Because we
Yeah.
have to, going back to like a trauma-informed way, we have to help couples to be healthy individuals so the relationship can flourish. And if we're
Yeah.
constantly putting the relationship on the back burner, how in the heck is it ever supposed to grow?
Yeah, and that's so achievable. Like that's so small. I think it's also important that you're helping them like explore and reaffirm that identity outside of co-parenting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Outside of the logistical stuff. Getting back to that mindset of like what things felt like when they were dating.
Yes.
When we're not spending date nights talking about we got to take Jimmy to soccer
Mm-hmm.
practice and we got to pay the water bill and all that stuff. Like getting back to enjoying each other as people.
Yes. And the other tool that I develop, or that I suggest, is so, and I always clarify that there's no expectations, right or wrong, because I don't want them to become overwhelmed with that. The
Yeah.
other piece is we also want them to carve out a couples budget meeting. And I use the term budget, but it could be a business meeting. That's where we want you to sit with maybe a timer and say, let's look at our commitments for the next month. Are you going to do garbage this week? Are you going to get shoveling done? Like that way we can do it together, and we can hopefully avoid the resentments of like, well, I'm doing all the chores, or why am I doing all the pickups? Why am I the only one who's cooking and cleaning? Why am I the only one who's working? Why am I, that way we can start seeing where are some of the holes in the relationship. Do they need other resources? Like, do they need a financial planner? Do they need a referral to a doctor? That way we can see where the holes are, but that they're doing it together in love as a unit.
Yes.
It's been really
Wow.
powerful to see how that works.
Yeah, that feels so achievable and like so much more clear than when couples come in and they're just like, okay, this general thing is wrong. Like all of our fights look the same, and we still can't figure it out. Like that is a much more clear path.
And it gives them hope, I think.
Yes.
No,
Oh yes.
I also think there are some people who come to couples where they may have waited too long, or one or both
Oh.
partners are really saying, I think I'm done. And sometimes that's our
Oh.
role too, of being able to transition with that. And it's sad, but it's also, I think we just have to talk about that more sometimes, of being able to say, yeah, sometimes therapy is the goodbye.
Okay. That's hard.
I know.
Because I think about I don't know, I just think about myself as an intern and getting these couples and just like trying to help them save their marriage and maybe a little bit of a savior complex in there. That'd be hard to have to process that.
Hmm. But if we don't have
Yeah.
those conversations, how are our clients going to be able to have it with us? Like, I'm just not in
Yeah.
love anymore, or this betrayal was too big, or losing our child really broke us and we waited too long to come
Mm.
in, or, we're empty nesters and we're strangers, or, there are a
Yeah.
million different things, or we love each other, we're just not in love. How do we navigate that? How do we co-parent without all of the, creating more trauma? Um,
Yeah.
and just being able to say, what you feel comfortable with in your practice is important, but also owning our fear of that. Of it's ends aren't always the ends; they're just new chapters.
Yes. And it doesn't mean we're a failure. And at the end of the day, like uh, the client's therapy journey is about what gives them the best quality of life.
Right. And also what they're putting
Yeah.
in the session and out of the session. And that's also where I love with the EMDR skills of like, what are you doing to add to your self-care outside of here that's going to help our work go further?
Wow. Okay. I know that's kind of a heavy note to end on. But Patrick, I want to thank you so much for coming on my show
Sure.
today and for everything. So, where can listeners learn more about you, learn about your course, learn about
Sure.
working with you, and just your brand in general?
Yeah, so patrickmonette.com is my main website, and I'm
Okay.
also on Instagram at Monette Counseling Services and Facebook. I can't, they're connected. I did have a podcast for about 3 years called Friday Night Feels, and we would
Ooh.
it was really, really cool. And that's on YouTube, so Monette Counseling Services, and I was able to talk about people with people all over the world about mental health and self-care, and also, even though I'm just going to go back to what you were saying is, yeah, it's heavy, but everything that I do is with hope. So being able to teach them that and bring in the joy and help them find love again. I think is really important. So people can reach out, and I have a weekly newsletter that I do, to support people and just try to do different ways of helping people with a crazy world. And, that way they can just know they have someone fighting with them.
Yes, yes. So, Patrick, I want to give you the final word. Is there anything that you'd like to tell my audience, maybe folks who are considering becoming a therapist, in the process of becoming a therapist, and they're interested in working with couples or EMDR or both?
Yeah. Well, if you ever have questions, reach out. I'd be happy to guide you. I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I'd ever say to someone who wants to be a therapist is do your own work and never be ashamed of that. And always have your supports, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a minister or a priest or a rabbi or whoever it is, have your people. So that way you grow in healthy, because when you enter this field, you're excited, but then you hit things that you weren't anticipating. And we want you to be healthy. We don't want you to get burnt out, because there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of stress, in this field. And being in therapy, having a life coach, having someone that's going to help you grow, I think is imperative.
Yes, love it. Love it. And thank you so much for my audience for watching through the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you find this content helpful. And then I'll have Patrick's information in the little thumbnail below his picture here on this video. And then I'll have some stuff in the show notes as well for you to reach out, connect with him, learn more about his brand. So thank you so much for watching. And I wish you the best of luck on your journey towards becoming a therapist.